Hey, Jerome back again. What's up, folks? Uh, this this time I want to talk about how I'm learning intervals. Wait, need some Buffalo Trace, my favorite bourbon. So I'm going to talk about how I'm learning intervals. This is what is today? Holy. Day 300 and something learning guitar. Let's check it out. Days since May 8th. 380 days, so a little over a year playing guitar. And now I'm focusing on last couple of weeks. I've been taking guitar lessons, learning some blues guitar, learning some like 12-bar blues, so something like and then we want to start to say soloing over 12-bar blue in E, so stuff like or or some minor blues licks. So that's what I've been learning over the last few weeks in the blues guitar lessons. So 12-bar blues and then soloing over top of it. But over the course of the last year, I've been studying Justin guitar mainly, and then recently I've been focusing on ear training and intervals. So in the opening there, I played so G minor pentatonic, and then the major scale, G major, and then G major scale in thirds. So the G major and scale in thirds is where we start getting into intervals. Well, the third interval. And the intervals is one of the key concepts of music. But when you're just starting out, it's one of those hard concepts to grasp. But I think it's one of the most important. I'm self-taught, so I'm learning this as I go. And I just want to talk about in this recording about how I went about ear training on intervals and understanding intervals. So I've been doing a lot of writing down by hand. So I start with writing down the note circle. So in Western music, assume everybody knows by now the 12 semitones in the Western music. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and all the sharps except for B sharp and E sharp. All the 7 white keys and the 5 black keys in the piano. So I assume that by now people would know that. Or I do anyway. And then the formula for building a major scale: whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And then from the major scale to minor scale, you flatten the third, sixth, and seventh scale degrees, and that gives you your minor scale. A major chord is the 1, 3, 5, the major scale. A minor chord is the 1, the flat 3, and the 5 of the major scale. So one thing that I started doing recently, like that's a lot to take in, and it doesn't really sink in at first. It takes a while for those things to gel. So once you understand how the G chord is formed, and then you start understanding all the notes in the G chord. But then you see the 1, 3, 5 of the G chord. So, but once we understand the formula, I don't know if you can see this, but the whole, half. Basically, every key, every major scale and every minor scale has the same intervals. It doesn't matter what key you pick; they all sound the same. Well, interval-wise, like the pitches will change. But say if I do G minor pentatonic, or if I pick E minor pentatonic. Pitches are different, but the intervals, the distance between notes is the same in all keys. So if you ever listen to someone like Guthrie Trapp or Josh Smith talk about a 12-bar blues progression, they'll refer to 1, 4, 5. So what they're doing, they'll say what key they're in, but then they'll only talk about 1, 4, and 5. So they're kind of normalizing every key, because in 12-bar blues it does. So because all the intervals are the same distance apart. Once the key is picked, everything else is fixed. So that got me thinking. So I've been learning the 5 positions of the pentatonic, the 5 positions of the major scale, and I've been focusing on the notes that are in that. So that's one thing. So just knowing the notes in the E minor pentatonic, or right. So it's I don't even know the notes off the top of my head. It really doesn't. For this purpose, it doesn't particularly matter. What I want to talk about is intervals. I should know them off by heart, but I don't. But we can go back to here, and I can cheat. The minor pentatonic is the 1, the flat 3, the 4, the 5, and the flat 7 from the major scale. So if I know what E major is, which I've printed off, so I worked out by hand all the formulas, so I can look up what the E major scale is. E major is E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D sharp. The 1 is E. The flat 3 is G, 4 is A, the 5 is B, and the flat 7 is D. So it's E, G, A, B, and D is E minor pentatonic, which is the notes from is relative major is G, because it's E Aeolian, which means the 6th scale degree of G. So it's all whole notes because we're throwing away the F sharp out of the G major scale. But anywho, so my idea was because everybody's talking about these intervals and knowing what is what is a third, what is a major third, what's a perfect fourth, what's a perfect fifth sound like. My idea was, well, let's just, instead of talking about things in terms of actual physical notes, let's convert that to actual scale degrees. So here's what I did. So I'll take E major scale. So using whatever means necessary, find all the E notes across the fretboard. You can use some ways of doing it, or use your old little snark to find them across the neck. You can do stuff, you can cheat and do this, print off the fretboard and look up where all the E's are, or you can do the cage shapes or the octave shapes and figure it, if you know where one E note is to, which I expect, for example, 12th fret on the first or sixth strings, you should be able to work out where all the E's are to using the cage shape. So once you know where all the E shapes are to, you, instead of writing down the letter E on fretboard paper, like here's what I did. I did that on the bottom here. Wrote down all the E's. Replace all the E's with ones. So we call that the one chord of the scale. And then what you can do is fill in the blanks. You can write down so there are in a major scale, so you can take any scale pattern, you can start anywhere you want, say for example minor pentatonic. So here's E minor pentatonic at the top, and we can write down, well, what are the notes in the E minor pentatonic? Well, we know E, G, A, B, D, E, G, A, B, D, E, and G. But instead of doing that, well, we can replace them with their actual, with their interval numbers. So 1 through 7, or we can also flatten it. So that's what I did here on the bottom. So I take every position on the neck in the key of E and call it, it's either 1 through 7 or it's a flattened version of 1 through 7. So the scale degrees would be the flat 2 or minor second. We could have the 3, the major third, or the flat third or the minor third. We can have 4, the perfect fourth, the perfect fifth, or flatten the perfect fifth to get the blue note, or the flat 5, or diminished 5. We can have the major sixth, or the flat 6. You can have the major 7, or the flat 7, or the minor 7. So that's what I did. I went ahead and did that across the neck here. So now I can reference the intervals. So now I've got the intervals. So now when I'm playing the major scale, or let's just say pentatonic. So instead of saying, so we can call that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 back to the root. Let's call it the intervals. So the intervals in the minor pentatonic are 1, the flat 3, major 4th, major 5th, flat 7 or the minor 7, and then back to the 1 octave. So flat 3, 4, major 4th, the perfect 4th, perfect 5th, flat 7, and the 1, and then back to the flat 3. So the recap, so the interval, let's go back to the intervals. So for the intervals, we could talk about the 1, the root, and then let's do the major scale. So let's start off in G. So in G, you get the 1, major second, major third, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6th, major 7th, back to the octave. So 1, second, major second, major third, perfect fourth, fifth, perfect fifth, sixth, major sixth, major seventh, back to the octave. So the 1 and the 2. So 2, major second, back to the 1, major seventh, major sixth, perfect fifth, perfect fourth, major third, major second, root, or the 1, major seventh, major sixth, perfect fifth, perfect fourth, major third, major second, root, seventh, and back to the 1. So that is how I am learning intervals. So to recap, write down where all the roots are, replace them with 1s, and then you can use the minor scale. The minor scale is the 1, the flat 3, the major fourth, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, the flat 7, or the minor 7, same, and then back to the root. You can use that to write down some of them, and then you can fill in. You can fill in all the intervals across the neck. So now we've basically normalized that. You can do that with any key. You know where the roots are. You can label it 1 through 7, and then some of them are flats. So you're going to flatten some of them. And then we can talk about, well, what is... So now we can start to listen for what does the major third sound like. Or what does the major second sound like? Or the major fourth, the perfect fourth, or a perfect fifth, or the perfect sixth, the major sixth. Or the major 7. No, that's not right. Yeah, no, that's right. And then back to the octave shape. Oh, hey, buddy. Great. So that's how I'm learning intervals. Write down across the neck. Instead of writing down all the notes, convert that to their intervals. So the one thing I learned, the one takeaway from this is, no matter what key you're in, every note, so once the key is fixed, no matter what note you play, it's relative to E, to your root. So we can go up a major second, we can go up a major third, or third this way. So it's a good way, it's a good practice to take your scale shapes and listen for what does the third sound like? What does a fourth sound like? And also look for what happens from the third to the second string. The third, because of the tuning of the guitar, the third to the second string. Normally, the guitar is turned in fourths, so every string it's fourth except from 3 to 2, which is the third. So now when I'm learning scales, so I've been practicing all the scales, so now as an exercise, let's see. That's so E major, E minor pentatonic. So I wrote down a scale. So I converted that into actual so the interval numbers, and I also did it for A minor pentatonic. So now when I'm practicing scales, instead of just knowing either just counting up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, we can just say 1, flat 3, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, flat 7, minor set or minor 7, and back to the octave. And now we can start doing a bit of ear training to see what does it sound like. And we can know when somebody says flat 5, what they mean is, well, where's the 5th? That's the 3rd, 5th is there. So the flat 5, or the blue note, we can listen to it. Or if I'm playing, and I can throw in a blue note instead. So 1, flat 3, perfect 4th, flat 5 or diminished 5th, and then perfect 5th, flat 7, and then a 1. So 1, flat 7 or minor 7, perfect 5th, flat 5 or diminished 5, the blue note, perfect 4th, major 3rd, and back to the 1. So that's my study in intervals. So as I'm practicing scales, now I'm more focused on what does the interval sound like. What are the intervals? And then I can use that. Instead of thinking in terms of raw notes, you can think of it in terms of numbers, and you know 1 3 5 is the major, 1 flat 3 5 is the minor chord. So that's how I'm learning about intervals. That's how I'm learning the intervals while I'm practicing guitar. I know music theory can be a bit music theory on its own can be a bit dull and hard to learn. It takes a long time to pick up on. But if I find that by doing things like E minor, by doing stuff like this, we're printing off fret paper, plotting out where all of the root notes are, and converting every other note to intervals, helps me learn and listen to what a major third, what all the intervals sound like. So we can do it, and then we can hear, and then we also use that for, say, triads. You can also say we can build triads. See. So now you can look for the 1, 3, and 5 on the top 3 strings to build triads. You can use D shapes, and C shapes, and the G shape to build triads. So now you're looking for, how do I build a chord up the neck? Well, I'm looking for here, well, where are all the 1, 3, and 5s here? Where's the combinations of 1, 3, and 5s on the top 3 strings? Where's the patterns? So now I can look for 1, 3, 5 instead of looking for the notes. It's easier. So now I can, because it doesn't matter what key you're in. If I'm playing the 1, 3, and 5. So for me, this is how I'm learning about intervals. I would suggest going to Justin Guitar and actually taking that or studying guitar theory books. But for me, doing this kind of exercises, plotting out all the intervals on fret paper, is immensely more. This is how I internalize intervals in guitar. So it helps me learn. So even though somebody else has their own system for learning, Justin Guitar probably have different, his music theory course, this kind of a thing helps me learn it. With the act of actually writing it down on paper and then matching that up on, and then playing it on guitar. So that helps me learn the intervals. That helps me with the ear training. So we can do 1, minor third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor seventh, octave, minor third, major fourth, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor seventh, octave, minor third. So that's what I'm in the process of learning scales. I'm doing converting it to intervals, and then I'm using that to listen for what each scale. So in the say for example in the major scale. So no, that's not right. So that's the root, major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, octave. So now you can do that with any scale. Convert it into its intervals and then listen to the intervals, and you can understand how music theory works, because especially for learning blues, they'll call out a key. They'll say, we're going to play in B flat. And then everything is fixed based off of B flat. So when they say playing 1, 4, 5, they know what chords to play, or they know what scale, what patterns to use based off of that and everything. And then they'll talk. So if you listen to Guthrie Trapp, he's talking about, well, I'm going to throw in the flat 5, or I'm going to throw in the 9, or I'm going to throw in. So when they talk about intervals, you know what they're meaning. You know. They're talking about how far away from the root note what notes are playing. So I'll call it there. That's by no means an intro. This is not a tutorial. This is my process for learning about intervals. It's probably not the best system, but this is how I'm going about it. So writing down where all the roots are, and then replacing on the fretboard paper the actual interval names, and I'm just using 1 through 7, and I'm using a flat symbol in front of it when it's to represent the flat 3, which is the minor third, or the flat 2, which is the minor second. The flat 5, the 5 chord is a perfect chord, so it's neither minor nor major. So when you flatten it, it's actually called diminished. But in blues, we call it flat 5. It's called a flat 5. When you flatten the perfect fourth, it's actually the major third. You flatten the major third, you actually get a minor third. You flatten a major second, you get a minor second. You flatten a major seventh, you get a minor seventh. You flatten a major sixth, you get a minor sixth. But either way, for notation purposes, I just use the flat symbol in front of all the notes. I don't get caught up in what their actual name is. So that is my process for learning, for studying intervals. So if I go back to the E minor pentatonic, 1, flat 3, major 4, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor seventh, octave, minor third, 4, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, minor seventh, octave, minor third, minor third. So that's my journey into learning about intervals. We'll call it there. Any questions, let me know. I know it's not a great tutorial, but this is my process for learning it. Thought it might be helpful for other people, so I just day 380 learning guitar. So this is my attempt at internalizing how intervals work in music and making sense of a little bit of music theory and applying it to guitar and applying it to my my learning of blues guitar. So I'll call it there. See you next time. Cheers.